What's up, guys? Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. This is episode 7 of the podcast. It's been a lot that's happened since last episode. It's been a minute since I made an episode, and I apologize for that. I've been kind of busy, but we're back today with an episode because free agency has arrived, and it has been pretty crazy so far. Lots of players going to lots of new teams, including the situation of two top NBA players, James Harden and Damian Lillard. Where they will end up, obviously, we're so excited because finally, after so many years of wanting him to, he finally asked out of Portland and demanded a trade, preferably wants to go to the Miami Heat. He said this a bunch in reports, but will he end up there? Because the Blazers have made it clear they're not just limiting their search to the Miami Heat. They're going to explore other options. They're going to really make sure they get everything they can for Damian Lillard, and so a lot to be talked about there. We'll get into all that today, plus all the free agency stuff, what every team has done. So if you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel and go check out all the other episodes. The support is appreciated. So we will begin talking about free agency and pretty much what each team has done. We'll start with the Philadelphia 76ers, who really have not done that much at all. They were able to sign Patrick Beverley to a 1-year, $3 billion deal, which is a pretty good pickup. You know, Pat Bev's kind of made his way around the league a little bit, to say the least. But, you know, you need a guy like Patrick Beverley on your team, a guy that's scrappy, that plays defense, that gets under people's skin. And, you know, there's no complaints having a guy like that on your team. They also signed Mo Bamba, center, that got waived by the Lakers at the start of free agency. So having a little depth there for Joel Embiid in case he gets hurt or he needs a break off the bench. But that's it. That's all the Sixers have done. So not really any moves to push for that championship run. Obviously, their situation with James Harden has caused a lot of drama, and we're not sure where they're going to go as a team now, who James Harden's going to go to, who they're going to bring in. Lots happening in Philly, so maybe they're not done with their offseason quite, yet, but we will see, obviously, what happens. It's going to be interesting to see where James Harden goes, what Philly brings into their team, their roster for James Harden, but we'll talk about that situation a little bit later. Moving on, we got the Milwaukee Bucks, who kind of keeping their core together, and I've said this before in previous episodes. I think they have one of the most talented rosters in the NBA currently, maybe even better than the reigning champs, Denver. I know Milwaukee just lost to Miami in 5 games last playoffs. Giannis was hurt. No excuse. They lost. They got beat. Miami played better. But I still think they have one of the most talented rosters in the NBA. They were able to re-sign Chris Middleton to a 3-year, $102 million extension. They re-signed Brook Lopez. They signed Robin Lopez, his brother. So they got the Lopez brothers on the team. Big re-signing Brook Lopez was. He's kind of he's a key factor to this, Bucks core. So glad they were able to re-sign him. They also re-signed Jay Crowder, which was a really, really good move. And then they signed Malik Beasley, who was previously on the Lakers, to a 1-year deal. So the Bucks kind of keeping their core together, which I think was very smart. I think that's something they needed to do. Obviously, they won the championship in 2021. I think they have the talent to run it back. I think they have the talent to, the year after, they had won the championship, Chris Middleton got hurt in that Boston series. Never knew what would have happened if he would have played. And then obviously last season ended shockingly when they lost to the Heat in 5, that no one expected that to happen. But we'll see what happens there. Obviously, it's up in the air who, the best in the East is, with the Celtics obviously picking up Kristaps Porzingis, kind of creating a big 3 there. But we will see where the Bucks go. I like that they were able to re-sign everybody, though. I think that was very important. Next team up is Chicago, and for the longest time, Chicago's been pretty poor in terms of their performances, in terms of, what they've been able to do. Obviously, the duo of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan hasn't really worked out. They've finished about that 10 to 12 range in the last 4 years, and it's kind of demoralizing. Bulls fans are ready for a change. A lot of people think they need to get rid of Zach LaVine, trade him off somewhere else. But only thing they've done is they re-signed Nikola Vucevic to a 3-year, $60 million extension, which is a good thing. I think Vooch fits in very well on this Bulls team. He's a guy that could stretch the floor, create space for guys like LaVine and DeRozan if they're wanting to keep that core together. I really don't know why they would. It hasn't done anything. But if they're wanting to keep that core together, I think Vooch provides a lot for their system. So I'm glad they re-signed him. They also re-signed Kobe White out of North Carolina. He is a big re-signing because of one thing, and I have not talked about this yet on the podcast, and that is the health of Lonzo Ball. And it's so sad. It's really expected to have his third knee surgery and miss the whole of next season. And, it's really demoralizing for a guy like Lonzo who was so hyped coming out of college, second overall pick. And, it's frustrating. Obviously, you got to be frustrated for Lonzo. He hasn't played. He missed all of last season. Then he missed half of the season before. So he's literally about to miss 2.5 seasons worth of basketball. Is he ever going to be the same when he comes back? If he comes back, a lot of people are saying might as well just go ahead and retire already. I don't know how I feel about it. I just feel bad for Lonzo because I know there was so much more that he wanted to accomplish in his younger years and he's not going to get to. But we'll see what happens with Lonzo. But the good news is the Bulls were able to retain Kobe White, and they also signed Javon Carter, who is also another guard. They also got Torrey Craig from the Phoenix Suns. So adding some pieces, but the Bulls, they have a lot of work to do, and I think they know that as well. Next up, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were able to re-sign Karis LeVert to a 2-year, $32 million extension. Karis LeVert fits in on the Cavs. Glad they were able to make that signing. They signed George Niang from the Sixers, and they signed Max Strus from the Miami Heat. And this is a big signing for the Cavs. Obviously, Max Strus was one of those players on the Heat those role players that were able to help Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo out on their finals run. Max Strus was a guy that can knock down threes, play defense, hustle, get rebounds, and he was looking to get paid this offseason, and the Heat weren't able to pay him what I guess the Cavs thought he was worth or what he thought he was worth. He got money. He got his, he found his home in Cleveland, and he's getting paid. So good job to Max Strus. He deserves it. He had one hell of a playoffs, and a lot of people didn't expect him to play like this and him to perform like this, but he did. So hats off to Max Strus for getting the bag in Cleveland. So it was a part of a 3-team deal, actually. The Heat got a second-round pick from it, and the Spurs were a part of it. They received Cedi Osman, Lamar Stevens, and a second-round pick. So, again, I'm not sure how Max Strus will fit in with the likes of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland kind of roaming that backcourt. It'll be interesting to see where they slot Max Strus in at, but he's a guy that, can guard a lot of players, can knock down threes, can, run good offense. So I'm glad they were able to pick him up. Hopes that the Cleveland Cavaliers can add someone else. I don't think their roster's that, quite ready yet, but we will see where they go from here. The next team up is Boston Celtics. So much to be talked about the Celtics. Obviously, they lost Marcus Smart, who was kind of the, he was the glue of the team. I think that they're ultimately going to regret trading Marcus Smart, but they bring in a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, adding them this 7'3" monster who can score at all 3 levels, and his defense is a little questionable, but he offers what they don't have, and that is a scoring big man. So that's really all they've done, though. I mean, they re-signed Porzingis to a $60 million extension for 2 years, and then that's it. They signed a couple of guys, O'Shea Brissett and Delano Banton. That's really all they've done in terms of that. They actually did lose Grant Williams to the Dallas Mavericks, but I'll talk about the Mavericks later. But that's another huge loss. Another, one of those where it's like that's, a tough, like Marcus Smart and Grant Williams were 2 gutsy guys who, one of those leave it all out there kind of guys that they lose. So that hurts the Celtics in the long run. I think it will. We'll see it this upcoming season. But moving on, we got the Los Angeles Clippers, who ended things last year against Phoenix. They lost in 5 after Kawhi Leonard wasn't able to continue playing in the series, and then Paul George was hurt the whole series, so he didn't even play. So kind of a rough ending for the Clippers. It feels like they've done this year after year. They were able to really do 2 things, which was sign Russell Westbrook back for very cheap. Shockingly cheap, 2-year, $8 million deal. Russell Westbrook's making $4 million a season. You don't often see guys like, you think of Russell Westbrook, you think of all of his, great plays he made, like on the Thunder, and you think that he's stumped down to the level now where he's making $4 million a season. It's not good. Obviously, Russell Westbrook hadn't been playing at the highest level for a long time now, but $4 million is still a very, very slim amount. I think it's good that he found his home and he is happy in LA with the Clippers, and I think that that's ultimately what this pay cut kind of shows, is that he really does love it in LA, and I think he wants to stay there for a long time. So good job for Russell Westbrook. He fits in on the Clippers. He obviously thrived a lot better on the Clippers than he did on the Lakers, so I'm glad he was able to figure out which LA team was working for him. They also re-signed Mason Plumlee to a 1-year, $5 million contract. Next team up is the Memphis Grizzlies, and obviously they got Marcus Smart from that Porzingis trade, and I already talked about how I like that Marcus Smart trade, because even after the Ja Morant suspension, he can obviously fill that Ja Morant role while he's suspended, but even after, I feel like their games will work together. They kind of play like opposite. They have good qualities, but they're kind of different. You know what I mean? Ja Morant's a very flashy, athletic guy, and Marcus Smart's, the defensive guy that's going to lock in, run your offense for you, and not have to put a lot of pressure on Ja Morant. So that's good for them. They also re-signed Desmond Bane to a 5-year, $207 million max extension. A lot to be said about that. A lot of people that I talked to about it said Desmond Bane's getting overpaid. He's not worth that much. Tough to say. I feel like Desmond Bane's one of those guys. He's, he found his home in Memphis. He doesn't want to be anywhere else, and I think Memphis really appreciates that, and I think, he was eligible for the max, so he got paid. So hats off to, Desmond Bane. He got the bag, really. Like, he really did. I don't think anybody expected him to be getting this much money, but he did. So Memphis found their shooting guard. He's also a guy that can play defense. He fits Memphis's system very well, so it's a good re-signing. Maybe it is a little too much, but it's a good re-signing nonetheless. They also were able to get Derrick Rose on a 2-year, $6.5 million contract, and it would be so great if Derrick Rose could just win a ring. That's what I've wanted for so long, is him to win a ring, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It's a tough situation in Memphis right now. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, but I want Derrick Rose to win a ring. That's for sure. The Atlanta Hawks have literally not done a thing. They have traded John Collins, getting that fat contract away, but other than that, they've done nothing. And the Hawks are so weird because they were pretty much middle of the pack in everything, every statistic last season. So they're not a bad enough team to where you want to go rebuild. Obviously, they still got Trae Young, but they're not a good enough team to be in the deep playoff contention. So it's a tough situation. I don't know what, the Hawks GM is thinking, but they haven't done a thing, so they need to get on it. Otherwise, Trae Young's going to become not happy, and they need to keep him happy. Trae Young's, obviously their guy, so they need to build a team around him, and hopefully they will soon. Next up is the Miami Heat, and obviously they've finals run, nobody expected, so a lot of people are attracting, towards Miami, especially Damian Lillard. We've talked about it. He wants to go to Miami. That is 100% sure, and I've talked about in recent episodes. That is just the perfect fit. I feel like Dame complements Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo's game perfectly. He will fit right in, but we will have to wait and see on the Dame situation. But they have been able to sign Josh Richardson, which I like Josh Richardson, to a 2-year contract. They re-signed Kevin Love, and Kevin Love is one of those guys I feel like you need on your team, kind of that father figure, almost kind of a guy you need on your team. And then they traded Victor Oladipo to the Oklahoma City Thunder, which, tough break for Victor Oladipo. I know that he's had a bunch of recent bad injuries, so hope that he can regain his form that he had before he got injured, kind of his Pacers form that he used to have. Hopefully it works out for him. And then they were able to sign Thomas Bryant to a 2-year, $5.4 million contract. So the Heat, they lost Strus, but they were freeing up that cap space. They lost Gabe Vincent, which I'll talk about later. He went to LA. But they're freeing up that room. I'm afraid that the package they're trying to offer Portland is not something Portland's interested in. I feel like Portland's not interested in Tyler Hero. He's obviously a big trade asset after what we saw last season when he didn't play in their finals run at all. Tyler Hero didn't touch the court. So he's obviously a big trade piece to think about. But I don't think Portland wants him. I think Portland's very guard heavy already. They have a bunch of young guards. I don't think they want to bring in another young guard. But we will have to see where they decide to go. But that's anyways what the Miami Heat are doing. Charlotte Hornets, not much. They re-signed their franchise guy, LaMelo Ball, to a 5-year max extension worth up to about $260 million. So, again, one of those, situations where, their franchise guy, they're making sure he's staying. LaMelo Ball has had a very successful career so far. I think he fits in with the Hornets perfectly. I think the Hornets love him. I think he loves being in Charlotte. Perfect way to, offer that, given the max extension. The next thing they did, which they didn't really do this, but Miles Bridges, who has obviously had a lot of off-court issues, he signed a 1-year, $7.9 million qualifying offer. The Hornets already said they didn't want anything to do with him, though, so maybe we'll see him. I think he becomes a unrestricted free agent next season. We'll see maybe where he'll end up later on, but that's all for there. The Utah Jazz obviously acquired John Collins from the Hawks, and then they traded Damian Jones, their backup center, to the Cavaliers. Not much else for the Jazz besides one big thing. They were able to re-sign Jordan Clarkson, which I feel like was a huge thing for them. Jordan Clarkson fits in great on the Jazz, and a lot of people thought Jordan Clarkson was going to walk and try to find somewhere else, maybe where he's a contender. But he re-signed with the Jazz. He loves it in Utah. He already said he loves it in Utah. So big re-signing for the Jazz. Obviously, they're not even paying him that much either. It's a 3-year, $55 million extension. So a good way to keep a guy that they needed to keep. They really needed to keep Jordan Clarkson. They do not have a lot of backcourt depth. They're very front court heavy, which is another reason I find the Jazz in a little bit of a pickle right now. But we'll get into that as the season gets closer. Sacramento Kings, again, similar to the Bucks, trying to keep the core together, re-signed Harrison Barnes to a 3-year, $54 million extension, and then they re-signed Domantas Sabonis to the max, 5-year, $217 million. Great signings across the board. They were able to keep their core guys together, looking to run it back like they did last year. Nobody expected them, kind of like the Heat finals run. Nobody expected the Kings to finish third in the West. I know they lost in the first round of the playoffs, but they did play the Golden State Warriors. It's a tough first-round matchup, a team that has so much experience in the playoffs and in the finals. They have more experience than probably any other team in terms of how many times they've been to the playoffs and, how many times they played together. Kings had no experience. So it's a tough matchup, obviously. So Kings are looking to keep their core together, maybe add a few more pieces, and then run it back. They were able to re-sign Trey Lyles and re-sign Alex Len as well. Looking now at the New York Knicks, they were pretty busy. They traded Obi Toppin to the Pacers for 2 second-round draft picks, and then they were able to sign someone very interesting. That is Dante DiVincenzo. Weird signing because I don't feel like this helps any of the Knicks' problems. I feel like the Knicks' problems are with R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle. I don't think that Dante DiVincenzo really will fix anything for them. It adds them a scorer who can definitely knock down the three, who can drive a little bit. He plays some defense, but I don't think this fixes anything. They already had a pretty good backcourt. But maybe him and Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and Emmanuel Quickley, there's just so many players, but maybe they'll all fit in together. Hopefully the Knicks may try and do something else. Obviously, they've been another target for James Harden. I think that doesn't work at all. I think he doesn't fit in there at all, but we will have to see about that. Looking on the Los Angeles Lakers, pretty interesting thing here because a lot of people that I've talked to think the Los Angeles Lakers have the most depth. They've had the best, free agency. They got so many pieces, and so many people are like, that's such an overreaction. They're not that good. It's, stop overreacting. What they have done is they re-signed Rui Hachimura, which was a big move. I love that move from the Lakers. They needed to re-sign him. He was crucial in their playoff run. They signed Gabe Vincent on a 3-year, $33 million contract from the Miami Heat. That was huge. I feel like Gabe Vincent will fit in great with this LA team. Adds a bit of scrappiness, adds a bit of, a guy who can come in, score, run an offense, play defense. Gabe Vincent was looking like the Finals MVP games 1 and 2. Obviously, games 3 through 5, he fell off a mountain, but he was looking very solid and very promising before games 3 through 5. So great pickup for the Lakers there. Obviously, they signed Taurean Prince to a 1-year, $4.5 million contract. Then they were also able to sign Cam Reddish and Jackson Hayes. Two great, pickups for this LA team to come off the bench. Cam Reddish, obviously, he likes it in LA. Jackson Hayes is one of the most athletic guys, in the NBA. He can jump. So good signing for them. And they were able to re-sign 2 crucial players. One especially is Austin Reeves. They were able to re-sign him for a 4-year, $56 million extension. So they got him for not that much money. And then they were able to re-sign D'Angelo Russell to a 2-year, $37 million contract. Big moves for the Lakers, kind of, retooling the roster a little bit, adding some pieces. I still don't put them above the Denver Nuggets right now. Obviously, they're up there in the West in terms of the best, but the Denver Nuggets are just too good right now. I will say, though, the Denver Nuggets did lose someone very, very crucial. I'll get into that later. I probably know who I'm talking about, though. Next up, the Orlando Magic. Big, signing for them was Joe Ingles for a 2-year, $22 million contract. But that's it. That's all the Magic have really done. They haven't done it. They waived Bol Bol, which I don't understand why, because I feel like Bol Bol, did well for them last season. I don't know what it is, but no one seems to want this guy on their team. And I feel like, he's a 7-2 scorer at all 3 levels. I don't understand why you wouldn't want a guy like that on your team. But they did waive him, so looking interesting to see who signs Bol Bol. A lot of people want the Spurs to have the slim towers of Wemby and Bol Bol on the same team. That'd be kind of insane, but we'll see where the Magic go from here. The Dallas Mavericks were able to pull off a very impressive re-signing that I did not think would happen, which is Kyrie Irving to a 3-year, $126 million extension. I did not think that would happen at all. I thought Kyrie would ultimately end up in LA or somewhere other than Dallas, because I feel like Dallas, even with this re-signing of Kyrie, this doesn't really fix anything for them. They need defense. They don't need more scorers. Obviously, Luka and Kyrie are one of the league's best backcourt, if not the best backcourt. But still don't feel like it fixes any problems. I still feel like there's a lot of, issues in Dallas, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they add somebody else to the team. Well, who knows? We'll see. They were able to sign Seth Curry, which again is another shooter and scorer, not a lot of defense there. But Seth Curry's a solid player. They signed him to a 2-year contract, and they were also able to re-sign Dwight Powell to a 3-year, $12 million contract. So, little bit of confusion for the Mavericks at this point. But I will say they did do one good thing, and that was sign Grant Williams from the Boston Celtics. That is one good thing that they did do, because he is a straight defensive guy, a gutsy, will go all out there and try to win you the game. It adds an element of toughness to this Mavericks team that needs it. They needed a guy like Grant Williams. He can also shoot the 3 every now and then. He's a good 3-and-D kind of guy who adds some experience, and I feel like he fits in perfectly with this Mavs team. So great pickup for the Mavericks there, I will say. But it was kind of a weird situation that happened. It was a 3-team deal. The Celtics got 2 second-round picks, and then the Spurs got Reggie Bullock from the Mavericks. So the Mavericks did lose a shooter, but they brought in Seth Curry, so it's kind of balances itself out. I like the Spurs picking up Reggie Bullock, though. That's a good pickup. I'll talk about that a little bit later, though. But good pickup by the Mavs, but still feel like they need a little bit more. Next team, Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets were able to re-sign Cam Johnson to a 4-year, $108 million extension, which is I've loved what the Brooklyn Nets have done ever since trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I've loved how they've, created this team and brought this team together. They were able to re-sign Dennis Smith Jr. to a 1-year contract. They were able to sign Lonnie Walker, which I love. I loved what he did for the Lakers. I love that they brought him to Brooklyn. I feel like he's going to fit in perfectly with the Brooklyn Nets. They traded Joe Harris to the Pistons, and I feel like Joe Harris hasn't lived up. I feel like he's, I feel like every time I watch him play, he's supposed to be one of the best shooters in the league, and I just feel like he's not that. So, sorry, that is a thunderstorm happening outside my house right now, so ignore that. But good move trading Joe Harris. They got 2 second-round picks out of it in 2027 and 2029. They also were able to trade Patty Mills to the Rockets, so kind of getting rid of some players with bad contracts and bringing in some younger, more, exciting players. I love what the Nets are doing right now. Also a target for Dame, too. A lot's been talked about that. I still feel like that wouldn't work out. It would, but I don't think it's smart for their franchise. The reigning champs, the Denver Nuggets, what have they done? Lost Bruce Brown. That's one thing that really hurts. Bruce Brown was a guy that came off the bench for them, gave them good minutes, created turnovers, made shots, created, doing ISO dribbles. So that's a big loss. That's a huge loss for this Denver Nuggets team, and you know that they're hurting from this. Obviously Michael Malone looks like an idiot now for what he said in the parade about me and Bruce ain't going nowhere. Bruce literally signed with the Pacers 4 days later, or a week later, or something like that. But crazy to think that that happened. They were able to re-sign Reggie Jackson and re-sign DeAndre Jordan. They also signed Justin Holiday, gives them a bit of wing depth and a defender. But the problem is losing Bruce Brown hurts. I know the number one thing you want to do after you win a championship is in the offseason is re-sign all of your players. They weren't able to do that. I still think the Nuggets are going to go right back up there in the title odds, even without Bruce Brown. But it hurts. They also lost Jeff Green, who was another guy that came off the bench. They ran 8 men in the finals, and 2 of the 3 off the bench are now on other teams. So we'll see what happens with the Nuggets. I still feel like with Nikola Jokic, anything is possible. Indiana Pacers, obviously, they got Bruce Brown on that 2-year, $45 million deal. I love that. I think he fits great with the Pacers. And then they were able to re-sign their franchise guy, similar to the LaMelo Ball situation, Tyrese Halliburton, to a 5-year extension worth up to $260 million. Like I said, very similar to LaMelo Ball in that they found their franchise guy. They want to build their team around him. Tyrese Halliburton deserves it. He's been playing pretty good basketball for the Pacers. Pelicans, not much. Re-signed Herb Jones to a 4-year, $54 million contract. He's been solid for them. I think he fits their system perfectly. And then they signed Cody Zeller from the Miami Heat to a 1-year, $3 million deal. But that's it. Obviously a lot of questions about what they're going to do with Zion. I don't think they want to keep Zion, if I'm honest. A lot of people are concerned about his weight and his health and if he'll play. He's, at times been seen where he's fine. He's healthy to play. He's over there doing 360 windmills and, all kinds of crazy dunks outside. And he's, injured on the court, like he won't play. So a lot to be talked about there. I don't know what they're going to do about that situation, but I guess we will see. Next team is the Detroit Pistons. They waived guard RJ Hampton. That's it. That is literally all the Pistons have done. I'm not sure, what direction they're going. I think they have a young core. Obviously, they just drafted Asar Thompson, but I don't know where they're going from here. I did see one thing. Jaden Ivey, who got drafted last year, he was a young, promising guy. He said, we're going to run it back. A lot of people are underestimating us. We have a lot to prove. All this. And they do have a good, solid young team. They got Cade Cunningham coming back. They got Jalen Duran. They got Asar Thompson. They got Jaden Ivey. Some young guys who I think will, and now they got Joe Harris, just traded from the Nets. So I think the Pistons they're a young team, a young coming up team. I think it's going to take them a couple years, though, to really be in, playoff contention, I would say. Next team up is the Toronto Raptors. We're able to re-sign Jakob Poeltl to a 4-year, $80 million extension, which I felt was a very, very good move. I felt that was a smart decision. Poeltl fits in perfectly with this Raptors team. They were able to sign Dennis Schroeder to a 2-year, $26 million contract, and the reason they did that is because they lost Fred VanVleet which is sad. A lot of people loved Fred VanVleet in Toronto, but he is off to the Houston Rockets. We'll talk about that right now, actually. The Rockets are the next team. He goes to the Rockets on a 3-year, $130 million contract. Rockets had money to spend, and they spent it. Fred VanVleet's making $43 million a season. That is wild. I don't think anybody expected that. I certainly didn't. You know, Fred VanVleet is a very, very good player. He's a young player. He, you know, really thrived on the Raptors, especially after Kawhi left, kind of taking that role of being the best player on his team, either him or Siakam. I feel like they're two different positions. It's kind of hard to tell. But VanVleet got up out of there. He got paid. The Rockets paying him so much money. I'm still not sure how VanVleet will fit in with the young, dynamic backcourt of Jalen Green and Amen Thompson, who they just drafted. But we'll see. The Rockets also did a lot more than that, though. They were able to sign Dillon Brooks, who a lot of people, he became a big name over, the last couple months in terms of all of his drama with LeBron James and, how he pokes bears. He's a weird dude. But he was able to get paid $20 million a season, 4 years, $80 million deal. That's impressive. A lot of people didn't think Dillon Brooks would make nearly that much money, probably not even half of that. But he proved us all wrong, and he's making $20 million a season playing for a team I think he fits in well with. I think he fits in well with the Rockets. I think they, needed a scrappy defender. Obviously, he's going to be there for defensive purposes, but I think he fits in very, very well with this Rockets team. So they're a young team again. I don't think they're going to be making any noise. They still might be the worst team, in the NBA, but we'll see. We'll see where they go from here. For adding Fred VanVleet is pretty solid, though, I will say. Were able to sign Jock Landale from the Phoenix Suns, which is a good pickup, a little backup center for Sengun, who kind of came into his own this past season. He's playing good basketball. They were able to sign Jeff Green from the Denver Nuggets, which, again, was very, very huge. And then they actually traded Patty Mills, who they got from Brooklyn. They traded him to Oklahoma City, getting that contract. No one really wants that Patty Mills contract, it seems like. They also traded KJ Martin to the Clippers for some second-round picks. So the Rockets were a very busy team. They had money to spend, and they spent it. That is for sure. Next team up, San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, the team that everybody's looking at, Victor Wembanyama, to perform and build this team around this generational talent. All they've done is really sign Trey Jones to a 2-year, $20 million contract. I like Trey Jones, but that's really all they've done. I will say they've signed a couple more players, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce their last names because I just wouldn't be able to. But if you've kept up, if you're a Spurs fan, you've kept up with what y'all done free agency, you signed those guys. I hope they do fantastic. But anyways, the next team up is the Phoenix Suns, the Bradley Beal Landers. So what are they going to do to surround their roster around this big three of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal? Is get bench players. A lot of people were concerned about their bench. That's ultimately why they lost last season. They were really the only team that kept the Nuggets a competitive series. So a lot of people are thinking, man, if Phoenix can add a bench, they already added Brad Beal. This is a championship team. They were able to re-sign Damian Lee and Josh Okogie, which was big. They, those two guys are much needed on the Suns. They signed Keita Bates-Diop. They signed Drew Eubanks from the Trailblazers. They signed Metu from the Kings, and they signed biggest one, Yuta Watanabe from the Brooklyn Nets, pairing him back up with his ex-teammate Kevin Durant. Sniper, absolute, very good three-point shooter. Also, another addition who's a three-point shooter is Eric Gordon, who signed a 2-year, $6 million contract. So Phoenix has gone out. They've actually had a very decent offseason. They have some bench pieces now. I think they need a little bit more, maybe a little bit more, forward depth. But other than that, I feel like they have a solid roster. It's hard to look at a team that can compete with the Phoenix Suns at this point, with Booker, Ayton, Durant, Beal. It's a scary lineup. We'll see how they look when October rolls around. But next team up is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have not done hardly anything, really. They signed Jack White to a 2-year contract. Keeping it so real, I don't even know who Jack White is. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. I really don't know. They did. I have watched some of their Summer League games recently. Summer League hasn't officially started. The Vegas Summer League starts July 7th. But the Salt Lake City Classic and the California Classic has been on. So I've gotten to watch some of the Thunder's games. And Chet Holmgren, a lot of people forgot Chet Holmgren even existed. This man looks solid. This man looks very, very, very good. His ability to block shots. I think my mic just cut out for a second. His ability to block shots and his ability to, force tough looks at the rim is very, very, very scary. He looks like a very, very good player. I actually have him winning Rookie of the Year over anybody else. He looks that good. If he can stay healthy, that's his main concern. But the Oklahoma City Thunder have a young team. They got the Williams brothers, who are very, very solid. They got Chet Holmgren. They have Josh Giddey, and then obviously pairing all that with their franchise guy, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's going to be very interesting to see what they end up doing next season. I can't wait to watch. They're a very fun team to watch, the Thunder are. The Timberwolves, they signed Naz Reid to a 3-year, $42 million extension. I think that was a very good move. They signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker to a 2-year contract. Then they signed Troy Brown and Shake Milton, who I feel like Shake Milton was a very, very good pickup. He obviously came from the 76ers. Really good, two-way player. I think he's, very underrated, was very underappreciated in Philly. I feel like Shake Milton can come into Minnesota and make a big difference. And then they re-signed their franchise guy, Anthony Edwards, to a 5-year, $260 million extension. Very similar situation to LaMelo Ball and Tyrese Halliburton. Anthony Edwards is one of those guys that fits into the Timberwolves. He's elevating his game year by year, and, eventually he'll be up there with some of the best shooting guards / small forward. I don't really know what y'all would consider him. I consider him a shooting guard, but in the league, he'll be up there one day. The league, it's getting better and better. I feel like he's elevating his game a lot. We saw it last season, especially. He played very good basketball, and I feel like it's only going to improve from there. Next up, the Portland Trailblazers, the biggest, question mark right now. They have Damian Lillard still on their roster. They're looking to trade him. I don't know what they're going to do about it. It's a very interesting situation. Dame said, I'll see what y'all do in free agency, and then I'll decide. Only thing Portland did before Dame requested a trade was re-sign Jeremy Grant to a 5-year, $160 million extension. Why? I don't know. I feel like it was a dumb thing to do. I feel like Jeremy Grant's not worth that much money. What Jeremy? Jeremy Grant's a good two-way player. He can score. He's a good defender. He fits Portland's system. However, he plays half the time. He was hurt a lot of last season. He didn't play that much. And, this guy's making the same salary as a guy like Paul George. I just don't think that's right. I think Dame saw that, and he's like, yeah, I'm out of here. Sorry to anyone. I'm gone. I want to be traded. Get me out of here. Which he should have done that so long ago. But that's really all the Trailblazers have done. They also matched Matisse Thybulle. The Mavs tried to offer him a 3-year, $33 million contract, but the Trailblazers matched that deal, so Matisse Thybulle will be returning. But that's it. That's all the Blazers did. And now the Golden State Warriors, they re-signed Draymond Green to a 4-year, $100 million extension. Obviously, I felt like they would do that. I couldn't see him playing anywhere else other than Golden State. They got Chris Paul in that trade that I think makes no sense. I've talked about that in recent episodes. It makes zero sense why they would want Chris Paul on their team, because I just think he doesn't fit in, but maybe they'll prove me wrong. It's all going to be so interesting to see what happens next season. They were able to sign Corey Joseph, too, to a 1-year contract, so adding a little bit of guard depth in there as well. Then the Washington Wizards haven't really done anything outside of the big trades, the Porzingis trade and the Chris Paul trade. They acquired Jordan Poole, which I feel like he's going to have a breakout year next year. I feel like Jordan Poole is a perfect pickup for Washington and what they're looking to do, which is complete rebuild, which they've needed to do that for a long time. They're finally able to do it. They're finally going to do it. Very smart move there by the Washington Wizards acquiring Jordan Poole. They re-signed Kyle Kuzma to a 4-year, $102 million extension. So keeping their young core players together, trying to build something, trying to start something in Washington is a very good move. And that's really all in terms of free agency stuff. That's every team. I've gone over what they've done in free agency so far. Now looking at the James Harden situation. And obviously he opted into his contract. He wants out of Philly. He had a bunch of relationship issues with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is now fired. James Harden doesn't care. He still wants out of Philly. He's been on the move a lot too. A lot of people are criticizing James Harden for not staying put and not, maybe like actually staying on a team. But we'll see where he ends up. I personally think after all the reports I've seen, I believe the Clippers are the best fit for James Harden because they offer, something that a lot of other teams don't offer that are interested in him. They offer defenders. You got guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, two unbelievably talented players, but they're defensive guys too. They're not just offensive. They're not just scorers. Kawhi Leonard is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Paul George is one of the best two-way players in the NBA. Probably the best. Maybe it's Kawhi. It's Kawhi and Paul George though. They're easily probably the best two-way players in this game. Adding a guy like James Harden doesn't put any pressure on Paul George or Kawhi on offense. They can chill, they can relax. James Harden can carry that load on offense, and it takes away, hides a little bit of his defensive inability with a team of defenders. The Clippers, I feel like, are a perfect fit for James Harden. I feel like he would like the LA area too, a lot more than he would like, the New York Knicks. I feel like that would be a terrible fit. I don't know how him and Jalen Brunson and all their guards, they had like a million guards. That wouldn't work. Some people even said something about the Boston Celtics. I don't think that would work either. It wouldn't make any sense to. They already got Jaylen Brown. I feel like adding James Harden, he doesn't fit in with their system. And yeah, that's really, all the main talk of James Harden has been to those teams. So I feel like he fits in best with the Clippers. I hope he ends up there. I hope he finally settles down because, good Lord, he's been on the move a lot. Next is Damian Lillard. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I've said it 100 times. Damian Lillard would be a perfect fit for the Miami Heat. I think everybody agrees with that. A lot of people are saying he'd also look good on the Bucks, but the Bucks would have to give up too much. I think the Bucks need to keep their core together. They could possibly run it back. But the Heat need to do anything and everything they can without losing too much to go after Damian Lillard. If you put Damian Lillard on the Heat right now, I think they are the favorites out of the East over the Bucks and over the Celtics. But will the Heat do that? Because the Blazers have already said they're listening to everybody. Obviously, you would think the Blazers would do Dame justice after all he's done for their franchise and trade him to somewhere where he actually wants to be traded, but he doesn't have a no trade clause, and that's the end of this. That's the end of the story. He's not Bradley Beal in this situation. He doesn't get to pick where he goes. So, very interesting to see what the Blazers are going to do. He could end up in Brooklyn. I think if he goes to Brooklyn, it would work. He'd be surrounded by younger players. They wouldn't be title favorites. May make a deep playoff run, but I don't think it would, necessarily be beneficial for Dame's career. Although I think, the Nets are a promising team here in the future. I think Mikal Bridges, they've already said he's not going anywhere. We're not giving you Mikal Bridges for anything. They're keeping him, which I think is smart. I think he could have a breakout season next year as well. So there's teams like that. There's other teams like the Spurs he said he has great respect for, pairing him with Wemby. All in all, for Dame's career, looking at it right now, I feel like the best fit for him, the best fit for the league would be him on the Miami Heat. I feel like this would be just, his game with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I feel like that big three works in like ways other big threes don't. You look at Phoenix's big three right now. They all kind of play similar style. I'm not saying it can't work because it damn sure can. But they all kind of play similar style. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, and Damian Lillard, they don't play similar at all. And I feel like that would complement each other and it would work to perfection. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Obviously, a lot of talk right now there's been so many reports about, Lillard and this whole trade drama, how he wants to go to Miami, but the Blazers aren't just going to sit there and listen to whatever Miami, wants, and they're not just going to trade him somewhere where they don't feel they get equal things back. They said they wanted a young star for Dame, but Portland at the end of the day, they don't need any guards. They don't need any guards. I don't know why you would trade Dame and get guards in return. They have young guards. They have Anthony Simmons. They have Scoot Henderson, who they just drafted. You know, they have guys like this already on their team, so it's going to be weird to see what they do and how, you know, this whole thing unravels. It's going to be pretty crazy. I can't wait to, you know, ultimately see. And it could end up in a situation where Dame isn't even traded at all. You know, a lot of people have said Dame may still be a Blazer next season, even though he said he wants to leave. It's similar to the Kevin Durant, when Kevin Durant requested a trade last season. They didn't find anything good in value, so they kept him. And, you know, they were able to talk things out with him, and KD was like, okay, I'll end up staying. You know, All-Star break rolls around, and they end up finding that perfect match, which was Phoenix, and they trade him off to Phoenix. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Sorry, apologize. This has been a very, very long episode, but a lot has happened since the last episode. All the free agency stuff, and then this Damian Lillard stuff, man. It has been everywhere. A lot of people are saying he may go to the New York Knicks as well. So, I don't know. We'll see where he ends up. Obviously, I've said it over and over. Miami is the perfect fit for Dame. I hope he ends up there because I like Damian Lillard a lot. I would like to see him compete for a championship, and I think that makes the balance of the league so interesting in terms of the East versus the West. A lot of people think the West has the more balanced, you know, good teams, while the East has the two powerhouses in the Bucks and the Celtics. But I think that changes things if Dame makes his way to Miami. We will see what happens. Again, apologize for this long episode, guys, but I had to get all this information out because it's been a crazy free agency so far. But thank you guys for watching this episode. If you enjoy it, please give it a like. I will actually be recording my next episode from New York. So I'm going on a trip up there all of next week, and obviously Summer League starts next week. We got to see who does good, how Wemby looks, and worth noting, Brandon Miller has not looked good so far. How Scoot looks, how the Thompson brothers look, it's going to be interesting to see what all they are able to do in their Summer League games and their NBA debuts. I can't wait to see it. But yes, next time you see me, I'll be in New York. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing the Summer League and looking forward to letting you guys know what I think. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoy it, please give it a like and subscribe. See y'all.